topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program, which has been brought to you with passion and pride since February of 2015. Thanks for tuning in this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. If we've not met before and you don't know me, I am a workforce advisor, organizational psychologist, management consultant, logotherapist, speaker, and author. And my team and I at Gusto now help companies to enliven and fortify their operations by building a dynamic, high-performance culture, inspirational leadership, and nurturing managers activated by meaning and purpose. Many organizations are not aware of just how critical it is to invest in developing their leaders and managers, not just for their own effectiveness, but also to avoid burnout and to keep them fulfilled. And did you know that inspired employees outperform their satisfied peers by a factor of 2.25 to 1? In other words, inspiration is good for the bottom line. You can learn more about us and how we can work together at gusto-now.com or my personal site, elisecortez.com. Getting in today's program, we have with us today Dr. Vasu Tolia, who is a physician turned visual artist and international speaker who integrates her background in pediatric medicine with the transformative power of creativity. After a distinguished and fulfilling career as a tenured professor and pediatric gastroenterologist, she reinvented herself through art, using color, form, and neuroscience to foster healing, resilience, and purpose. We'll be talking about the neuroscience behind beauty and how it contributes to well-being and how organizations can harness it for in their physical surroundings. She joins us today from Detroit, Michigan. Dr. Tolia, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Thank you, Elise. I appreciate your warm welcome, and your resume is also so impressive.
Thank you, Dr. Vasu. It's so wonderful to have you here in the studio and to get to talk about you, your life, your work, and what you're bringing forth. And for listeners or viewers who are actually joining us via the web, if you can see her beautiful art behind her, it's just stunningly gorgeous. It definitely is already healing. And oh, look at that. That's beautiful. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about how you've gone through a few careers in your life. I think it's fascinating when people navigate different careers. And of course, you started off from academia to a private practice and eventually onto abstract art. Take us through the journey. First, we'll talk about why did you become a physician? Why did you want to choose medicine?
Thank you for that question, Elise. I really didn't have any role model when I was young to become a physician, but I was in school, and in 9th grade, we had to choose between science, arts, and business or commerce, that what they called. And I was going to choose arts, but my best friend, her brother was in medical school. So she told me that let's just take science. And I took science, and then I became a doctor.
You make that sound so easy. I'm quite sure it wasn't that simple. But so I know it was a fulfilling career for you. What was fulfilling about that career?
Oh, it was extremely fulfilling because it made me practice kindness, empathy, and all those good values that my parents, especially my mother, had instilled in me. And to be able to practice and take care of patients and parents. In pediatrics, you're treating parents more than you're treating patients. It's, important to reassure them about what's happening. So, and then I had the opportunity to do research also. So making contributions to advancement in medicine, I found equally fulfilling as patient care. Then mentoring and teaching were also part of my repertoire. So to have my fellows emerge and become division chiefs somewhere else and advance in their career was very gratifying. So there were so many aspects of my medical career that I will always cherish and be proud of.
Well, it's really wonderful. As an organizational psychologist, Vasu, I've chosen this particular field. I'm not a clinical psychologist, anything like that. I care about the world of work because I believe in the nobility, the beauty of work as a way to be of service in our lives and to help us catalyze ourselves into more of our higher potential. So it's wonderful to hear of this earlier background. Now, I have to imagine that along the way, you must have been practicing art as you were also in the medical space. I can't imagine you just set it down, or did you pick it up later in life?
Yes, I picked it up later in life. Before that, my art was limited to making medical drawings and diagrams. And when my children were young, one of my sons used to draw quite a bit. Like he actually used to make some comic strips and periodic things, like little sketches and all. And I used to love it. I always enjoyed viewing art. And so when I retired from my medical career, my husband kind of gently urged me to try something to keep me grounded, develop a creative outlet, because he knew that I needed engaging and nurturing activity, that will keep me sane. Because, having been working like 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and even working on weekends many times for research, he knew that there was a tremendous void in my life, when I decided to retire. So that was the beginning of how I started it. And then I found it pretty engaging, although it was very frustrating also initially because I had to take baby steps and start from scratch. So having this duality of being a novice, in something else starting when you have been on the top of your profession, it was very challenging. But I somehow continued. And during COVID, I kind of liberated myself because initially I was doing representational art by copying from photographs and just trying to emulate whatever was in front of me. But then in COVID, I just felt, I had to find myself, and I started experimenting more and more. And I feel I found a voice to abstract and semi-abstract artworks. And what surprised me was how nice and engaging it felt. Just like medicine, art is also like observation, and then you express it, whether you do it by drawing or painting, or music or whatever. I'm not trying to say that visual art is the only art to practice. I know that most of the forms of art do help, relax and de-stress in many ways. But my particular forte is visual art because that's what I found, and I feel that I'm having a great time doing it because I find it healing for myself. And that's when I started to investigate more as to what art can do to you, and started delving further into neuroscience and this thing. But it has become more than a pastime. Quite early in this phase of my career, it was a way to process, transform, and serve in a new form. Besides being my own form of healing, not to replace medicine, but to complement it, I felt that, it helps you hold space, gives you permission to feel everything without any judgment, and to whisper hope and beauty when words run out of your repertoire.
That is beautiful, really beautiful. Well, can you help us, shall we say, connect the dots or paint the line between, you've said some of this already here, but you're talking about the transformative, the healing power that you were doing as a physician, and now you do with a paintbrush. And would you help us dig a little deeper? You said, I love how you're talking about how words can fail us when it comes to how art can speak to us, but take us another level deeper into how art is a healing mechanism, how you're seeing it as a mechanism to translate what you were doing before to what you're doing today.
Yes. The seed must have planted in my mind years ago when I saw my son doing it. But I myself used to write a lot in a journal when I couldn't express what I was feeling in words. So I knew that healing is not always verbal. So when I started painting, I experienced that same sense of release, reflection, and resilience myself. And I realized that this was not just hobby material, it was medicine too. I had to experience it before I could give it to others. So it has become my way for continuing to serve, process, and eventually help others see their own inner strength and beauty. Painting has become a modality to regulate my mood, invite into reflection, and it also soothes nervous system overload. So I call it kind of visual therapy. And I realized that what I was doing as an artist was essentially continuing my voice or my role as a healer, but using beauty and creativity instead of instruments like stethoscopes and endoscopes. Um, it's a it's such a profound thing that you experience when you're deeply immersed in it. You go in a phase and get irritated when you are distracted, or household things and responsibilities have to be there to ground you again, to get out of that zone. But you get a few hours of it and you realize how different you feel. And it's a lovely feeling. And I know that people who play music feel it. um, People feel it by knitting, sewing, sculpting, cooking. There are people, and any kind of activity that soothes you and makes you feel good can be your form of art.
I am just so enjoying just the way you're rendering your story and bringing us into this beautiful space of yours. And so far, we've been talking about how you're practicing art and how it's nurturing you in the experience of rendering it and also creating it. Let's go to the other side of that and speak to the experience of the person observing it. And I want to situate it from the realm of neuroscience because I think that's really fascinating. So I want to understand from a neuroscientific
Sure.
perspective, how does it help us who are actually observing it? I'm looking at your art behind you, and immediately I do feel calmer. I feel a sense of connectivity to it, like I'm drawn to it. But help us understand the science behind this.
Yeah, sure. There is an active act of doing art, actually making art, and a passive by observing or listening and things like that. So, this visual medicine, it calms the nervous system, it sparks inspiration, and holds the space for unspoken emotions. But it's still about empathy, still about service. Only the tools have changed. And in many ways, it allows for a broader impact, especially in workspaces, public spaces, and homes. And I'll tell you how. Neuroscience tells us, because I have been digging into this to understand all these phenomena better, it tells us that exposure to beauty and art engages parts of the brain that are beyond the rational cortex, sensory, emotional, and memory systems. So art can lower cortisol, engage the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the protective part of our autonomic nervous system, and give what I call actually your mind a break, and from constant fight flight kind of experiences. It's like offering your nervous system a moment to breathe. There is growing evidence also that visual art and all other kinds of art, especially certain colors, shapes, and forms, activate the prefrontal cortex, which is just behind our forehead. And It lowers the cortisol levels. It can even release dopamine, the feel-good hormone. And art stimulates multiple sensory pathways. The more kind of senses are involved, the better the effect is on the nervous system. So it offers a form of nonverbal emotional processing, which can be very powerful when people are burnt out or stuck in high stress analytical modes. And like I told you earlier in this segment about the active and the passive role. So there is a thing called museum effect. So even if you don't make art, you go and visit some places, where art is displayed. Uh, that kind of also soothes and calms your mind. And you may not realize it, but it kind of slows down your breathing and deepens it. It decreases your heart rate and just makes you feel calmer and better if you're enjoying it. Like, painting is not for everybody, but when we go to performances like theaters, dance, music concerts, and all, the same effects happen because that's something we enjoy and that's how we de-stress. So it's such a multifactorial thing that helps, that understanding it wants me to dole it out even more and more so that I can, help a whole community rather than just a few people.
It's really, really beautiful. Let's let our listeners and viewers reflect on what you've been sharing here and just sit in the beauty of the moment that you've conjured for us. And we'll take our first break. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Dr. Vasu Tolia. She is a physician turned visual artist and international speaker who integrates her background in pediatric medicine with the transformative power of creativity and beauty. We've been talking a bit about her earlier career, how she herself has been nurtured by creating her art, and starting to open the conversation on how the rest of us can benefit from it in terms of well-being. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, as I am dedicated to helping create a world where organizations thrive because their people thrive and are led by inspirational leaders that help them find and contribute their greatness and do business that betters the world. I keep researching and writing my own books. One of my latest came out. It's called The Great Revitalization, How Activating Meaning and Purpose Can Radically Enliven Your Business. And I wrote it to help leaders understand the nature of today's very discerning and diverse workforce, what it is they want and need to perform at their best and stay with you. And then I provide 22 best practices to equip your culture to provide that for them. You can find my books on Amazon or my personal site, elisecortez.com. If you are just now joining us, my guest is Dr. Vasu Tolia. She's a physician turned visual artist. We're talking now about how we can start to integrate this into the workplace. I'm very interested in helping equip leaders, as I just said, to create experiences, environments where people really can shine. And there's been such a profound shift over just the last several years, as I think we've really awakened to so much more of what it is that we want in terms of our lives. What's your perspective, Vasu, about how, or maybe you have a finger on the pulse as to what you've learned about what leaders are trying to do with art for their people, for their environments?
I think it is something that is a must for all leaders, and I don't know if all of them are doing it, but I know that some of them are. But the leaders are the people who set the emotional tone of the place, where you work. And if they show vulnerability, they show curiosity and creativity, it gives others in their team permission to do the same, to feel that kind of liberating movement. It also signals emotional intelligence and that well being are being valued, not just productivity. Um, so, empathy, wonder, hope, like aesthetic experiences, can help leaders move beyond the problem solving into visionary thinking, because that emotional expansion is what allows others to build trust, inspire action, and lead with meaning. So it kind of makes the workforce more cohesive if they feel that they are surrounded by something that gives them a respite during moments of intense concentration. If they need a break, all they need to do is to look at what they liked is on your desk or around them. So I think giving each team their own personal space to decorate or fill it with things that they like, or listen to music or whatever during periods of break, those kinds of things, small acts can go a long way in creating a richer workspace.
You are totally talking my love language, Vasu. Totally speaking my love language all the way through that. I had a vision as you were talking of a workplace and a leader stopping. I can imagine your art being displayed and a leader walking to his next meeting. And the vision was a male, and it just stopping because he was drawn by the beauty of your artwork and just allowing himself to be given over to it. And in the process, just what you were saying, everyone around him was drawn to and liberated and invited to do the same. And that's what was coming into my mind as you were sharing that. Isn't that beautiful? I would love to work in a place like that. I'd love to help more people work in a place like that. So take us back. I think if I remember from our earlier conversation that something happened for you and your art during the pandemic. I think you got to display some of your work someplace. Tell us about that experience.
So during pandemic, as I was doing my own thing, there was a call by Washington Post about COVID art. So I responded to that and submitted 2 artworks. And to my surprise and sheer delight, I was told that one of my artworks was considered amongst top 20 in the nation. And I felt very happy and elated. And next year, Center for Disease Control approached me and said they wanted to use that same artwork for the cover of their Journal of Emerging Infectious Diseases, which was dedicated to COVID mainly. And that is probably one of the best achievements of my life, where I felt like my medicine and art came together. I mean, I have participated in many shows and group shows and solo shows I do every year, and even when I win the first prize or best of the show or any prize, and there are shows when I don't win anything, but that moment of being called by CDC and seeing my artwork on the cover of the journal after it was published, I really felt very fulfilled.
I hope you have that frame somewhere in your house. Do you?
It is not displayed right now, but it was displayed for a while. Now I'm giving it a break and giving others a chance.
Okay. Well, that sounds like something that needs to be revered and given its own shrine someplace, it seems to me.
Yeah, that work is not for sale.
Right. No. For you, it's in your home is where I can imagine it.
Yes.
I'm interested too in how we together in this conversation and certainly through your work, that we can help leaders think of more ways or situate more ways where creativity is part of the environment that they steward. Do you have a perspective on how leaders can help provide that for their people?
That's a very interesting question. the leaders have the opportunity to lead with their whole selves if they feel the whole self themselves. So when a leader shares about art or whatever relaxation activity they love, pauses to admire beauty, just the way you were quoting earlier, or acknowledges emotional states, it signals to others that it's okay for us to be vulnerable too, you know? So they become guardians of emotional culture, for their team or people
Mhm.
surrounding them, not just task culture, you know making beauty part of the culture, whether through shared art spaces, creative expressions, or simply asking people how they feel in their environment. So when they see themselves reflected in their surroundings, they feel seen, valued, and safe, and probably less burnout, more retention rate, if they feel valued. So there is a lot beyond just the beauty that your nervous system, makes you feel that you belong here. It gives you a sense of belonging and probably more loyalty also.
Oh, you have no idea how much you are beautifully weaving so many of the concepts that we've been talking about in this program together in just this one conversation. And over the 10 and a half years that I've hosted this podcast, we've really cycled through a lot of concepts. And if you were to look at the content of the last 10 and a half years, what you would see is really the unfoldment of my consciousness. And I would say the elevation of my consciousness. And so today, I'm so riveted on helping more organizations and certainly their leaders who steward them to navigate what I consider to be those higher levels of consciousness, those higher emotional states. So I've had conversations on this podcast around wonder, awe, joy, and really I think you're one of the first now to contribute to the idea of beauty and the neuroscience behind that. And I'm really encouraged by that, and that you're weaving together so many of the concepts that we've been cherishing, just I would say in the last couple of years alone. What's the next step from this? Where do we go from here?
These are all the ways of empowering people to feel empathetic, wonder, gratitude, curiosity, and these are very underrated feelings. It opens up the space for belonging, for connection, and for innovation. When someone feels more curious about what this abstract art represents or looking at it and wonders rather than feel defensive, then they feel more gratitude rather than entitlement. Your culture shifts from fear to possibility as to what you can achieve and do. We would see more resilience, more loyalty, and more original thinking, I feel. And the burnout often stems from disconnection or depletion because either you are overworked or you're underappreciated and just not feeling satisfied. So, art reintroduces emotional nourishment and connection, two things that people are starved for. That leads to better outcomes across the board. So we would probably see fewer people leaving, fewer sick days, better morale, engagement would go up, not just in surveys, but in actual work. Innovation emerges when people feel safe, beautiful, energized, and not depleted or merely compliant. So I think there is a whole host of cycle that your brain undergoes, and it calms your body and makes you feel much better about, like, you will look forward to going to work every day rather than, oh no, another alarm has set off and I have to be there again, that kind of a feeling. So I think nurturing your team is very important.
Mm. I feel very hopeful about what you've just put forth there. I do see that as a really beautiful next for so many organizations, and I would like to help steward them into that space because I think it is beautiful. And I can already feel, my blood pressure is certainly lowered since I began speaking with you. I'm sure of that. And I do feel that sort of a connectivity to you and to your art, but also to the possibility of this conversation. And I can imagine how that would lift innovation, creativity. I think the idea of feeling connected to your colleagues and to the organization that you're part of that has stewarded this in for you. So I appreciate so much that you have ushered in the possibility for this, and I really hope that listeners and viewers that are with us in this conversation can witness that possibility for themselves as well. What I would like to do is let's grab our last break, and then after the break, I want to talk more about how we can help empower leaders to situate art and beauty and creativity in their organizations as a day-to-day practice.
Sure.
I'm Elise Cortez. We've been on the air with Dr. Vasu Tolia. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. I mentioned in the last break that my latest book came out, The Great Revitalization. What I have done for you is I have created a 3-page free assessment. It's on my website. It will help you understand the extent to which your organization is meeting the needs of today's discerning workforce. You can find it at gusto-now.com. If you are just joining the program today, my guest is Dr. Vasu Tolia. She's a physician turned visual artist and international speaker. So for this last segment of the conversation here, Vasu, I would love to take this to a bit more of a practical realm for our listeners and viewers so they can apply what we've been learning in their world. And as we were on break, I was thinking to myself, one of the things that might be interesting for organizations to do would be to, one, of course, have beautiful art, in terms of their decor, what their people are surrounded by. But two, I envisioned the idea that if they had actual labs available for people to be able to come and create art together, to be able to make that part of how they are expressing maybe what they're doing for their customers, or maybe how it is they're coming to problem solve. Can you talk to us a bit about maybe some of the ways you envision, or maybe what you've learned about that companies are doing to bring art and creativity and beauty into the workplace for their people?
Yes, sure. I'm so glad you asked that question. Art speaks across roles and hierarchies. It invites people to share their own stories also and create a shared experience. So they could have a room where in a break where some of these basic materials are available and people can just sketch and do things, de-stress themselves in a 10-15 minute break and then just get back to their work or whatever they want to do. But it also turns the workspace, when you do these kinds of practices, from a transaction into a community. And that's where the meaning lives, that the meaning of a work as a second home. People spend most of their times outside their home at their work. So it needs to be a congenial place where, they would be happy. Of course, they have to put in their 2 pence and earn their living, but while doing it they can just feel happy. So because art invites story, it holds tension, and it surfaces what people often carry under the surface. By encountering art together, staff viewing or discussing it, we build a shared language and shared values that fosters better connection, belonging, and meaning. But it's very important not to keep the art static. You have to rotate them. Otherwise, people develop what is called museum fatigue kind of thing, looking at the same place or same piece again and again, they may get tired of it. So it's also very important to rotate it, say maybe seasonally. From time to time, 3 or 4 times a year, you change your pieces and bring something else in there for people to discuss and see. So, if places are designed for this kind of inspiration and collaboration, uh, it would not just increase efficiency. Uh, I think those offices will be more emotionally intelligent, and that environment will be fostering and nurturing them as a whole human being rather than just as a secretary or a receptionist or just a co-worker or an engineer and all. It would be the whole person, not just the profession that they practice. And it's not utopian, it's very deeply practical to do all these things. So I think there's a whole lot of things that leaders need to think about. And many of the corporate places just have one department, you know that decides what kind of art goes in that workspace, and they are not allowed to keep anything personal in some of the offices. Only whatever is approved by their office can be displayed. And these decisions are many times made by in consultation with an art consultant or some artist has found their way, and they don't change. So I think if they have a team decide making these kinds of decisions, and they work with somebody who understands the emotional impact rather than just the beauty, because when you are using art in whatever way, you're not just beautifying a space, you're calming, inspiring. Whatever piece you choose depends, what the effect it will have. So all these considerations need to be taken, when choosing what will be the thing, like not just dark black and white things, but I think we have quite ways before you make inroads into how these decisions are made.
Well, I'm encouraged by a lot of things, and we are moving so quickly, it seems today, just over, I would say, the last 5 to 8 years. And I've had many people on this podcast, futurists, future of work professionals and experts talking about where we're going, where it's all headed. And of course, we've got this AI revolution going on. And so I really feel, and this is something that it's our tagline here at Gusto Now, is that we're about doubling down on humanity in the age of technology. And so I'm really, you're speaking again my language when you talk about how can we create environments where we get to serve and be the whole person that we are, the whole human that we are. So I can envision very much, and I'm thinking about this for some of the leaders that I'm working with today. I can envision that employees in an organization, one would be drawn to the organization as an employer of choice, a destination workplace, because of the way that they embed beauty and creativity and art into their culture, into the way that they work. I can envision that. So then it becomes a beacon. And then I can envision that in that environment, I'd like very much the idea of the rotating different art to stimulate and to call forth different aspects or experiences in that person. But again, I can envision having maybe this is like a station or an area inside the organization where people go for their breaks, or they're like, let's go and have a jam session in the art studio. We're stuck on this problem and we can't figure out how to engineer this solution, or I can't quite get my head around how do we satisfy this customer complaint. I can envision that. Can you speak to what that might look like?
Sure. It can be a plain area with tables and chairs around it, so people can work in a group, like create a vision board, create separate pieces and then piece them together. These were the kind of workshops I was going to do in Thrive in 25, but didn't have a chance to do. They could have tables, like one table will just have drawing materials like papers and pencils and pens. Another one can have colors like crayons. I probably won't mess much with more of the liquid paints and those kinds of things, short breaks, they can have a table where they can just doodle. At least research has shown that during board meetings, when people who are doodling on the side, seemingly like they are distracted or not listening, they have 29% more retention rate about what the speaker was talking about than people who were supposedly deeply engaged in doing it. So, while doing some of these activities, you are focusing better rather than not focusing more. So, Zentangle kind of activities where you only make 4 inches squares and fill it with different patterns with ink and things. So there are so many different ideas, that can be implemented without investing too much, just allowing them time to breathe and just make shapes. And, I create many downloadable handouts in which I give these kinds of small instructions for different purposes. I'm going to be giving one to your audience too.
Oh, wonderful. Listen to that. You've got a gift coming, listeners and viewers. Well, again, as you were speaking, I can't help but I've stepped into your space with you now. So now I get to be more creative. But I also understand, I mean, you are a visual artist. I can also envision that lab of when you're walking into beauty and curiosity and creativity. It's got textile or tactile things. Maybe there's a sand pit or something. Of course, one of my favorite senses is hearing, sound. I'm sure that's part of the reason that I'm a speaker of a podcast, etc. But I also sing. So I can envision that there would be so many ways that we can literally invite people into the space where we could just stimulate their senses in the ways that called to them.
Yes. You could have a quiet room for people to just sit and meditate, or just a room where you can play whatever music you want, let it stream through for that short time, or have a room where they could just move around and dance around if that's what they
Yeah.
You can have different areas in a section where you could do whatever relaxes you and rejuvenates, rekindles your spark.
One of the things that I have been present to, especially here we are in 2025, when many large companies are mandating a forced 100% return to office, which I'm just going to go on record of saying I think that is wholly irrational for the world we live in today. I'm just going to say that straight out loud. However, if you are going to want your people to come back for some period of time, whether it's 100% or whether it's 75% or 50, whatever it is, make it enticing. And this is certainly a way to make it enticing, to make people feel like this is worth the commute. And, there's a phrase out there now that says, you got to earn the commute. And it's true. It's really true. It's true of any events, anything that calls people out of the comfort of their home or the rest of their life. It has to be earned for people to come to it. And I have long since thought that these kinds of opportunities, these kinds of arrangements where you're giving people something that they wouldn't get on their own, would be the kind of thing that we would want to be able to entice people to come back together and then co-create that shared space of belonging, connection, creativity, innovation. And I think that what you're putting forth here, Vasu, is really an opening, an opportunity into that new higher realm and way of being.
Yes, absolutely. It's something, and that way they also feel that they are not alone. And one doesn't have to be an artist to find healing and creativity. Like you can even have silly putty if you were talking about like texture and all that. There can be that kind of materials too, because different people have different needs that excites them or suits them. So beauty or creating beauty or experiencing beauty should not be a luxury. It's a basic need, that people should have an opportunity to fulfill. So if you're not feeling depleted, you start small. You notice the light, sketch your thoughts, surround yourself with color, do just little simple acts that you feel like, and it may take some experimenting before settling on what is it that works for you.
You said something in just that last bit there that I do want to call out, and that's the idea of, I forget exactly what you said, but what I pulled out of it was the idea of eradicating loneliness. We are in a loneliness epidemic now, and more people suffer from the feeling of loneliness than ever before. And so I really like the idea of the siren call, if you will, of creating an environment where people are compelled to come to be together, to do something and experience something together. And in so doing, co-create something that is beautiful and, what do I want to say? Enrolling and uniting.
Yes. Because even these small acts are healing. Beauty doesn't fix everything, but it changes the way we feel in the everyday. Start where you are, your creativities, your sensitivity, your art, all of them, they are all gifts, not burdens. You have a right to experience it. You deserve environments that support your soul, not just your schedule. And it's okay to ask for that. So if the leadership doesn't think of it, you really have to seek it out if they have not thought about it. Like, Elise, can you imagine a workplace where burnout isn't something we manage, but something we prevent? Where the walls breathe beauty and creativity is not a perk, but a practice. And art has the power to shift how we lead, how we live, and how we feel. And I invite leaders listening today to rethink their environments, not just the physical, but the environmental, the cultural spaces. Let's paint new pathways together and create a space that is fulfilling for your workers and yourself.
I think that is a beautiful way to finish the conversation. I was going to invite you to close, but I think that is an incredible, powerful finish and invitation. I do want to let you situate where we're going to give our listeners and viewers that gift that you were talking about. Where will they find that gift?
It is a link, and you can put it in your show notes if possible, that they go to www.vasutolia.art/visibility, and it will, then they will have an opportunity to download it.
Okay, so I will also say that again at the close here. Wonderful. Dr. Vasu, you are a gift to the world. I'm so grateful our paths have crossed, thanks to the wonderful women who brought together the Thrive in 25 Women's Conference that I was able to attend this year in June and had the wonderful opportunity to MC. It was an incredible opportunity, and I'm so sorry to have missed you. However, I'm grateful that it brought me to you, and that I've been able then now to share with our listeners and viewers around the world. Thank you so much for coming on Working on Purpose.
Thank you, Elise. It was my privilege and honor to be on your show. Thank you for the opportunity.
Most welcome. Listeners and viewers, you will want to check more into the work that Dr. Vasu Tolia is doing as an artist and as a speaker. One thing to do is start by visiting her personal site, which she just mentioned to you. It's Vasu Tolia. Let me spell that for you. VASU. VASUTOLIA.art is her website. And then to get the gift, you just simply put the / what's afterwards? Visibility?
The visibility prescription.
The visibility prescription. Oh, that is wonderful. Just wonderful. What a gift. Dr. Vasu, thank you so much for being on the show. Listeners and viewers, we will see you next week for another nourishing and inspiring episode on Working on Purpose. And remember, work is one of the best adventures and means of realizing our potential and making the impact we crave, and can give us the chance to do business in a way that betters the world. So let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.